I will call a very special session, actually, about the cultural context of lean thinking. And I will call to the screen. So we are connecting. This, like I said, is very special because we're connecting United States directly to Japan. So John Shook from the United States and Wako Miller directly from Japan, they will be sharing some thoughts on the cultural context of lean thinking. I hope that the connection works. So let's see if it will work now.
Here we go.
Got it.
Well, hello, Waku.
Howdy. How are you doing?
I mean, here's another fine mess I've gotten us into.
Yep.
Which is to continue what we were doing a year ago, and could not do another Lean Global Connection without you joining. I know you're very busy, a lot going on, so thank you for finding a little bit of time.
You're kind.
No, it's a year later. We're a year older. Are we a year wiser?
Yep.
Are we a year more broken down? Anyway, it's been a crazy year. So the theme this year is sailing in troubled waters.
Yep.
I like that, and I guess we've had more troubled waters this past year. But there are always troubled waters.
Yep.
What we're trying to do, of course, is continue to try to understand and make understood this way of thinking, the way of working, and first talked about in this book, that we think is powerful and can help the world. Part of it started with this book. Part of it started with Toyota in around 1950, I think. Part of it started 110 years ago or so. But one of the early arguments here was that just the context of our discussion, again, that we've been having now for almost 40 years, is that it's not a Japanese system. That's what this argument was, we say. And it's not Japanese in the sense that all Japanese companies do this, or that you have to be Japanese to do this. It can't be elsewhere. But that begs the question, something that you said to me many years ago, which is that there is a cultural context,
right,
within which this was born.
Right.
This way of working and thinking was born. And last year, as we got cut off, we were talking about the cultural context of lean. I asked you probably 2 or 3 times, and you always came back with a question to me. It didn't actually give me what your thoughts were on that.
I was imitating John Shook.
And you do. We can imitate each other, I think. But with a year having gone by, do you have any thoughts about that you'd like to share today, or a question that's going to come back to me first?
Well, I think something that, probably most of our listeners are familiar with, but maybe not conscious enough of in looking at the story of post-war Japan, and something that is really important to understand as a foundation for what continued into the 1980s is that in the 1950s, Japan was the only big nation. It was the only big nation in the world that had first world technology and third world wages. And that continued for more than a decade. And so it was sort of a once only occurrence. And so what do you do when you have other nations that have first world technology and are competing with you? Something that Toyota did extremely well into the 1980s was doing more of the same better. I mean, it's Eiji talking about, if you've got a towel, you can always squeeze another drop out of it. And Watanabe-san did that and became president on the basis of his success in once more, doing more of the same in getting higher quality and lower costs. Whether you can keep doing that or not, is another issue.
Well, there's
Should I
doing
keep
more of the
talking, or
same.
is this where you say, well, what about this?
Well, you could say what about a lot, I mean, so yes, there were those conditions around 19 after in post-war, and that's what became known as, made in Japan.
Right,
Right. So it had a great workforce, technology, but no money to really invest a whole lot in technology in the very beginning. But the wages were low, and all the industriousness and all that. But the rapidity with which, though, Japan picked itself up off the floor, you could say, as an example of resilience,
right,
of having gone through the most incredible disruption, arguably almost ever, right? With
right.
the
Yeah,
war, with the firebombing,
pretty disruptive.
the nuclear bombs and everything. So that is one of the questions here, really. So yeah, so doing more of the same. So in calm seas, we know that yes, a lot of companies can do well. Toyota was doing well. You could squeeze more out of the towel. Watanabe was the president of Toyota, who had been the head of purchasing, and was kind of known for being able to get cost out of the supply base. But what about, is there anything, again, with the theme this year of sailing in stormy seas, navigating through, turbulence, would you see any Japanese sort of capability, or that enables, that causes them to be especially adept at dealing with uncertainty and disruption, or more specifically than Toyota? Yes, it did for a long time, a lot with more of the same, but that wasn't true as they got started. And that hasn't been true at various points along the way. As one crisis has occurred,
Right,
respond
right.
through that and come out stronger, right? That's happened also
Right.
over and over. You could imagine, that you mentioned Eiji also. So Eiji Toyota, the leader who we both think, and many think, so critical to Toyota developing the Toyota we know today, or came to know, was so much the result of his work. But do you have any thoughts about that? About any ability to sail through turbulent seas, or to navigate times of great uncertainties and disruption?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's so much, there's so much to, a couple of things that I can talk about because I've witnessed them firsthand is one that you're very familiar with. It's just, and this is something that, is going to draw a lot of probably rebuttals, a lot of yes buts, but I think you have a unique cultural context in Japan, to the extent that people are willing to absorb pain and suffering, inconvenience on behalf of a shared goal, on behalf of getting through things and getting across the river to the other side together in the best condition possible.
Hello, I think we had a stop here. The team, did you manage to get the connection back? Do we have the connection with Wacko?
A great strength of
Okay.
Toyota over the years, until unfortunately recently, is the absence of factionalism. And I think, Shoichiro, Toyota Shoichiro, who was president for 10 years, is a good example of that. When anybody starts thinking that they're really indispensable, they find themselves, out the door. You could have a guy who's a chief engineer for a project. Hundreds of millions of dollars they might be investing in the new Corolla, for example. But if their personnel rules dictate that this chief engineer's time for rotation has come, they will rotate the chief engineer, a week before the new Corolla is about ready to roll off the line, because his successor is just as good as him. They assume that anybody in line for a job is as good as the person they're replacing. Nobody is indispensable. That's a great thing about Toyota, is that anybody can step in and do the job. Now, whether that's actually true or not is another issue, but they assume, and they do train people and equip people to perform as well as anybody who might have preceded them in a job. And that's true at the top too. Eiji gave way to Shoichiro. Shoichiro gave way, unfortunately, to a very traditional manner of succession in turning things over to his brother, who was sadly unequipped to handle the job. Sadly, he succumbed to illness after a couple of years. While he was president, there was a total paralysis. And when he succumbed to illness, Okuda-san succeeded him. And suddenly, they'd been waiting. Are we gonna start making the Prius or not? We've got this. Everybody in the Japanese car industry had a hybrid car, but nobody was mass producing it yet. Shall we go ahead with this? Shall we go ahead this with? And Toyota could not make the decision to do it, nor could they make the decision to build a factory in Europe. They had a factory in England, but they didn't have a factory on the mainland yet. And Okuda came in and they said, let's start building the factory. Let's start producing the Prius. A lot of things that had just been log jammed, started moving. If that hadn't happened, Toyota wouldn't be the company it is today. But since then, they've gone back to avoiding factionalism. And, Okuda-san gave way to Cho-san, and things, move smoothly until we arrived at Akio, who has been president forever, and there's no sign of him giving up anytime soon. And now we've got, for the first time since Shoichiro's brother, we have a strong factionalism at the company. You have a lot of people who are there in their positions simply because they are friends of Akio. And this is a very unhealthy situation, and it's probably going to, I don't know. I think it's, I think Toyota's best days are behind it.
Well, we shall see. I think this is definitely a good place. There's a lot there to unpack, I think. And it's also, it's certainly true that multiple things can be true at the same time.
Right.
And one of the things that
quantum physics, right?
Excuse me?
Quantum physics, right?
Quantum physics. Well, at any rate, there are a lot of things to unpack, to understand, and you definitely kind of took on, there's a notion of what respect for people means within a lean enterprise and at Toyota. Of course, what Mr. Cho and others came up with as the Toyota Way back in 2001 had two pillars of continuous improvement and respect for people, respect for humanity. And so what that means and how that is actualized in the real world is something that there may be differences between Japan and elsewhere. But I focus on developing capability and pushing people as far as they will go. I remember I went to a talk with Pat Riley once, the NBA player and then coach and now general manager, where he said when he first walked into the Lakers room as the coach, after having been, he was just a player and then assistant coach for years, he looked at everyone in the room and there was all these NBA just true, Hall of Fame players, Hall of Fame players, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he said, I need your permission to push you further than you will want to go. And it was kind of an American way in a different
Right.
different context, to say, yes, I might actually, I will push you further than you will feel like you want to go. But we do want to do that. It comes around to that alignment about who we are, who we want to be, which I think is worth going back to now, which is the other observation or conversation that I had with Mr. Oba that you like to bring out. And I should mention also that just a couple of hours ago, I had a conversation in this space with Jamie Bonini, who is the president of TSSC today. And he's carrying that tradition on. And how things carry on over time is just a problem for every organization. I think so far we can say that Toyota has been remarkably successful. Will it be in the future? We don't know. But the what he had said to me when I was challenging Mr. Oba back 30 years ago or so on some things that I thought Toyota was doing that wasn't perhaps embodying the principle of respect for people or for suppliers, whatever it may have been, I don't know. But he calmly told me, said the words to me that really frustrated me at the time, that never to confuse the Toyota production system with Toyota's production system, lowercase. That the Toyota production system is an ideal, it's a target, it's a condition we want to achieve. We try to achieve it. Sometimes we get close. On a good day, we can really be that. But we're not that all the time. As humans, we're not everything we want to be all the time. Some days I get closer to what I want to be than perhaps other days. But I think having that as an ideal to guide, and one that can be useful for navigating, whatever, whether smooth or turbulent waters, whether it's in Japan or elsewhere, it has to be a critical part, I suppose, of what we're thinking about here. Do you think? So in other words, alignment. We would reduce that kind of to the word alignment around a vision, alignment around a target condition, and then a commitment to do that. Another word that Jamie uses is that he's recognized through 30 years of experience at TSSC that the need to create a TPS zealot in any organization is critical. So that passion, say, this is where I want us to go. So Mr. Okuda came in back in the 90s and said, okay, we have some technology we're working on that could be that could become something, the Prius. And he said, let's do it, and let's do it very fast. And so he pushed people further than they wanted to go, faster than they wanted to go. But everyone then benefited from that, including the people that were involved in that. Later on in their careers, they would never have substituted that part of their career for anything else. That's what they wanted. So having that shining light up there, where we're going, that takes you a long way. Whether it's the workers in the factory, or it's the chief engineer you mentioned, or it's the executives or an organization. Now, I don't think there's necessarily, again, anything Japanese about that. But maybe there's some cultural context in terms of how it manifests itself. Maybe thinking back to the examples you mentioned of how it's so transition and succession for the last half century and more has been so smooth, without a lot of turbulence inside Toyota. That probably has been to their advantage. Will it be that way in the future? We don't know. I don't know. Do you find anything characteristically Japanese in any of that?
I don't know if I find anything characteristically Japanese in that, but we keep, well, I guess I offered the Prius as an example and you latched onto it. But something that's very important to remember about the Prius is that originally they did not develop the Prius as a path into electric power. They developed the Prius as a technology for making internal combustion engines work more efficiently. The electric motor in the Prius was just there to get it started until you had optimal, conditions for running an internal combustion engine. So you get maximal fuel economy and minimal pollution. And so the electric motor there was just to help the car run at a mode where the internal combustion engine was operating optimally.
Well,
And,
so they weren't latched onto the solution of electric or anything. So what can we
No.
do today that will have better fuel economy and lower
Right.
emissions? And they said, this is what we can do. And it was a very controversial decision in the industry at that time. My friends in Detroit at that time thought it was just nuts. So
Yep.
that's a bad compromise.
Too
This-
complicated.
This cannot make sense. Turns out it did make sense at that time.
And, but they have tens of thousands of employees in Japan at Toyota and at suppliers that are, reliant on internal combustion engine technology, all the components that go into it and stuff. And they are very loyal to their employees and to their suppliers, and they're extremely strongly wedded to internal combustion technology. And that's why they've been unable to make the leap into pure electric power. I remember a chief engineer at Toyota who developed he was in charge of the development program for the what they call the Estima in Japan. I can't remember what it was. It was a
It was a
middle
van.
engine.
That was a van, I think, right?
Yeah, it was a van, and the engine was in the middle, and
like a
it was very
Prius.
popular in the States, but they didn't go with it in the States because it wasn't something that they could use flexibly for a regular passenger car. But that chief engineer said, "Hey guys, it's the writing is on the wall. Let's go all electric. Let's start making electric motors, and let's close down our internal engine capacity." I mean, he was saying this. He's saying we
Sure,
got to go electric. And they sent him out of the company. They exiled him.
Well,
said it just-
everyone goes out eventually. The thing is, it's not a monolith. I think this is an important thing. People think, this Toyota. There have been voices to. I drove actually an electric van in Toyota about 30 years ago.
Sure.
It seemed
was
like
there.
something. It was amazing when you first drive them, but I think having multiple approaches to what's needed at a point in time, I think is
Sure.
a specific strength of the company. And again, I don't know how characteristically Japanese that is either, really, but it's a characteristic of Toyota for sure. And that's one also that companies now try to emulate to some degree. But sometimes it seems like it takes longer to work through different alternatives. And a lot of companies fall out along the way as they're kind of learning that methodology. Actually, I think there's a presentation about that in one of the sessions this afternoon, or there was this afternoon.
Okay.
As well. Now, there's one more thing before I let you go that you brought up last year, and that also kind of in presentations, that many of the presenters talked about the stance of leaders, and how sometimes the problem of ego can get in the way from being the kind of leader we want. And many people talk about servant leadership, or we talk about lean leadership, or at any rate, how can you lead in a way that takes the organization where you want it to go, and developing capabilities among the people that are doing the work. And Jamie again is talking about how critical it is to work with leaders so that they give themselves to this ideal in terms of way of working. So they're trying to chase, they become a lean zealot, or as he said, a TPS zealot. So that could be one way of kind of dealing with this issue of the ego of leaders often getting in the way, or becoming something that could be a hindrance to moving forward. Do you have any any reactions to that or any thoughts to that, how that might relate to this question of the cultural context of lean thinking. And then I'll let you get to your next your appointment this morning.
It's an interesting positioning of two mutually incompatible dynamics. You're talking about leaders and you're talking about ego, and you're talking about getting around the ego with a leader, and a leader.
Indeed.
It's sort of hard for me to conceive a leader without ego.
Indeed. Okay. Okay. So it's always there. Again, we can have multiple thoughts in our mind the same way, which none of us as a human, we just passed 8 billion this week, by the way, humans in the world. So there's 8 billion egos. But it kind of gets back to Pat Riley and the team of how we can kind of put the vision, the mission kind of ahead as we work together as a team, so we can collaborate to get where we want to go together. If someone brings someone can bring that together, and we can call that a leader.
I guess I would say that in Japan you have less of a notion of a leader. If you look at the political system, you had the Liberal Democratic Party, which has led Japan for nearly all of its post-war history, and we talk about politics as a matter of having one party rule, suppressing the other parties, but it's you don't have parties in Japan. You have an organization that is an organic whole from top to bottom, or from bottom to top.
It's a similar thing that someone can move in and fill a slot. It's a little bit.
Yep.
Even at Toyota, when I was there, the conversation wasn't about leader as a noun. It was always about it as a verb. It made it something that anyone could do.
Yeah, exactly. It's organizational initiative.
And an individual, as you take on a certain role and responsibility, it's initiative you can take, it's actions you can take. Instead of this notion of something born with.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got it.
We solved that
Hey,
human question. All right, see you here again next year, Waku, please.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Bye for
Good
now.
to see you.
See you.
Later.
I think we managed that one. Thank you, Shuk. Thank you, Waku.